Hello, everyone. We're just getting started here. My name is Daniel Moyer. I'm a sales support trainer here at Briggs Stratton Energy Solutions. With me today is Nathan Heston. Hello, Nathan.
Good morning, Daniel. Looking forward to this topic.
Good morning. So as we're kind of just letting people trickle in here, I just want to remind us all of the topic today. We're going to be talking about the future of solar batteries and the grid, NEM 3.0. So we're going to talk a little bit about the new kind of future in California and how net metering 3.0 is the new reality. And suffice it to say that you cannot go solar alone in California and see a financial return on your investment with the solar. So you have to pair it with a battery. And we're going to talk about why that is here in a second. But if we're thinking about the batteries and we're thinking about what a battery is now being asked to do, it's being asked to store energy during the day and then discharge it at night. It's going to be kind of essentially almost an off-grid, on-grid situation. And what we want to have is a battery that's going to be reliable. It's going to have a long-lasting warranty. And that's why I'm proud to say that we offer a 15-year warranty on our Amplify and Simplify batteries. So we're going to be repeatedly cycling these things. Our 15-year warranty doesn't have a cycle life limitation. It doesn't have a throughput warranty, which is how many watt hours you can put into a battery and watt hours you can take out. So
Sorry,
it's just,
correction. It doesn't have a throughput warranty limitation.
yeah, thank you, Nathan. Great. Yeah. And the battery has to be a workhorse of the system. We're going to talk about the inverters. We talked about some of the software that's involved in this, but really what's doing the work every day, day in, day out, is your energy storage system. So one thing is that we're one of the few companies that's actually been around longer than our warranty has been in effect. So we're going to stand behind it and be there for it. There's some of the market drivers. We show this a lot in our slides and our presentation, so I don't want to spend too much time here. But really, one of the things, what does batteries and what's driving the market is resiliency, right? Having backup at your home, allowing you to have that electrification of everything and help support the grid in situations where we're going to start to, as we electrify our transportation network and our heating of our homes, we're really going to need diversified, distributed assets that can help support this new electrification. There is a lot of opportunities with clean energy policies and rebates, namely the ITC, the investment tax credit for the solar now. You can take a 30% tax credit on just storage alone. You don't have to have solar like you had historically. Of course, you can't have solar and storage together and take that 30% tax credit. It's not a deduction, a tax credit, and you can usually roll that over for a couple years. We really expect this battery market to grow a lot. A lot of people out there have existing solar and they want to add batteries. Well, we can do that with our systems. We have the ability to AC couple systems come in after the fact and have a system there, storage, and potentially that solar system is on NEM 2.0. We're going to look at it here in a second, but you can add a battery to existing NEM 2.0 customers and give them that backup resilience without them losing that more favorable backup or that more favorable NEM 2.0 interconnection policy. Again, it gives us backup. It allows us to save money. We're one of the few companies that can actually warranty our battery systems for off-grid use. So that's one thing that historically where a lot of the solar industry got its start is an off-grid, and we still embrace that architecture. I know it's not the biggest market segment in the country, but it's something that we can still support. Also, generator optimization. We're one of the only two companies in the country that make both generators and energy storage systems. So we have other webinars where we go more into depth about how batteries and energy storage energy storage systems and generators can complement each other rather than compete with each other. So stay tuned for some of those upcoming talks, how we can use a generator to charge up a battery bank, shut the generator off, and then coast on the battery, saving fuel, runtime, the noise, the fumes that are sometimes associated with standby generators. Us being experts in both, we are able to integrate them together more seamlessly, have one sales rep, one tech support call, and be the experts. A couple of upcoming events I want to highlight before we get started here is Distributech. This is coming up pretty quickly here at the end of this month. If you're going to be there, let us know in the comments. And I should have mentioned this at the beginning here. If you have a question or comment during the talk, go ahead and use the Q&A chat feature or the Q&A feature here in the webinar, the Zoom webinar. Put it in there. Nathan will try to address some of the questions as we're going along. And if we don't get to the questions, that way we'll take some time at the end to address some of those questions. But if you are going to Distribute Tech, please put that into the chat now. Let us know that you're going to be there, and we'll make sure that we have somebody ready to talk to you and make sure we get you a free hat, shirt, whatever you need there.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I will be there in Orlando. And as Daniel shows on the screen there, booth 423. If you are in the Florida area and you don't have a ticket to Distribute Tech, we can help you out and get you a free ticket as well if you'd like to come into the show, see our booth, speak with us. Please do get in touch. Happy to meet with you.
Yeah, Florida in February sounds great. On the screen, though, is a little kind of hint of what we're going to be talking about here. We are announcing the launch of our new battery. It's a 6.6 kilowatt hour battery. So each one of those segments that you see there is each 6.6 kilowatt hours. It's an outdoor rated stackable battery that's going to really make it easier for install, really make it less likely to screw up networking cables and power cables. So really excited about that. And we're going to have another slide coming up here in a second to talk about that.
Yeah, so what you're looking at there was a 20 kilowatt hour stack, right? And we have a very high C rate on that as well. I believe it's 1C, which means you can discharge that very quickly to power big loads if they come on first needs like surges.
Yeah, exactly. I don't expect somebody to discharge it in 1 hour to power the home loads, but if it needs to discharge quickly to start momentary motor loads, exactly, can handle those large rushes. Another upcoming conference here is a NABCEP conference. This course is not actually NABCEP accredited. We're working on getting all of our courses NABCEP accredited. So the next time we give this, it may have the accreditation. But we are going to be out in NABCEP. I'm going to be giving a talk of off-grid living with simplified batteries. Really excited to give that. Nathan, you're going to be giving a talk on whole home backup featuring the SolarArc 15K and our batteries. It's March 18th to 21st. Did you want to mention anything on that, Nathan?
Well, we're working to get SolarArc is looking to pair with us on this training. So we're looking to have both of us at my training there, a trainer from SolarArc as well as myself. And we'll also be talking about how you can use that new 6.6 battery stack to run SolarArcs. It's ideally suited for SolarArcs, and we have a long history of having our communicating batteries seamlessly interface with SolarArc. So looking forward to giving that. And if you are not able to attend NABCEP, I'll also be giving that talk the week before NABCEP as well.
Yeah, and I do have, Nathan, I do have and for everyone listening, I do have some upcoming slides. We're going to talk a little bit about that integration. So a sneak peek to what Nathan's going to be going more in depth about. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of net metering in California. Before we do that, I just want to make sure we take a step back and kind of look at what, an energy storage system can do for a home, right? In the middle, you see there is a hybrid inverter where we can take inputs from solar, generator, battery storage, grid, and then we can use the inverter and a very advanced monitoring and control system, the software behind the system, Energy Track, to help control the flows of power when and where we want it to go. So as we're thinking about not being able to send energy back to the grid during the day because we're not getting a favorable kind of credit from the utility, we can then store it in the batteries and then discharge it when it's most advantageous. So really the heart of the system is the inverter. But again, I want to make sure we understand that the workhorse of the system is a very reliable, safe battery that has a lot of cycle life to it. Again, having the software also there is going to make this thing work to your advantage, to your homeowner's advantage. So really, the idea that you can backfeed energy to the grid is relatively kind of a new idea. In fact, the first kind of net metering policies that came online in California were back in 95. And I realize that's almost 30 years now, but it's really kind of a newer kind of a paradigm that we're looking at. And the idea that even adding battery energy storage to these systems is relatively new as well. The first, Tesla Powerwall, which is what everybody kind of thinks is the energy storage system that started it all, really didn't come online until the mid 2010s. And there's been history of other systems before that. What happened was in the early 2010s, California and the California Public Utilities Commission kind of reapproached the net metering policies and really kind of just essentially kind of kept with the status quo that was net metering 1.0. And what was that? Well, we see here we have a nice diagram from NREL where it's showing solar on a roof. Solar has been feeding down into the house. It is then supporting any loads that may be on the house that are on. Any excess is being sent back out your meter, out onto the grid. And for every kilowatt hour you send back out to the grid, you get a credit, a credit in kilowatt hours, net energy metering. And then you could use up that credit at nighttime or in the winter. So you would get what's known as a true-up bill, where at the end of the year, or usually at the anniversary of when your system was commissioned, you would get a true-up bill that would say, look, and ideally, if I've sized your system right, it would say, we don't owe the utility anything, and the utility doesn't owe us anything. Of course, you're having to pay maybe a $10 a month fixed charge, which they're trying to raise on us. This was how it worked. And what this was, is it allowed the rapid adoption of solar photovoltaics in California. If it wasn't for this aggressive, and I would say appropriate interconnection policy, solar photovoltaics wouldn't be the way it is today without this. And this is what it was historically. It was credit in kilowatt hours. With net metering 3.0, which just took an effect, it's changed now. Now, usually you still just have one meter, but how it looks now is that we have solar producing on the roof during the day. We send it down into the home just like before, power any loads that happen to be on at the home at that moment, and then we send it back out to grid. Now, what's happening now, though, is you're not getting that one-to-one credit. What you're getting now is compensated at the avoided cost rate of what the utility would have had to pay to generate that kilowatt hour elsewhere. So you're getting kind of the wholesale rate. And so what that means really is when you're sending back out to grid, you're getting paid, instead of that one-to-one credit, you're getting kind of less than a cent or 1 or 2 cents a kilowatt hour billing credit. But when you consume energy from the grid, you're still paying the retail rate. And that retail rate can be 20, 30, 40, 50 cents a kilowatt hour, especially depending upon whether it's during certain time of use rates. So again, the blue is you're purchasing from grid. The green is you self-consuming from your solar. And then the yellow is what we're sending back out to grid. And what this essentially net metering 3.0 is doing to us is that it's no longer viable to backfeed the grid anymore and be compensated for that. You have to store it in batteries during the day and then discharge the batteries at night. Nathan, any questions or comments?
Well, I'd just like to comment on it, I guess. I just signed up this week for a new utility connection at my shop. And my shop's got 3-phase power coming into it. The cheapest rate I could get, and it goes up in the summer, is 42 cents kilowatt hour and off peak. And it goes up to 48 cents during peak times, during peak demands. It's typically the afternoon to evening. And then in the summertime, when energy use goes up, it gets more expensive and floats in the 50s to 60s. And so now, I mean, with a connection to the grid here, if you are overproducing, you're essentially not getting compensated for overproducing. But if you're underproducing, you're still, even when solar is available, spending a large amount to buy that power at retail rate from the grid. And so that's why you were saying, I presume, that you really need a battery to make the solar panels cost effective for you. Because now, selling back to the grid, you don't get anything for it. And so all you can do is cover your loads with your solar panels, or store that energy in lithium batteries or a good battery system so that you can self-consume it later.
Yeah.
And I think that's the conundrum I'm facing here. I mean, I know it's not the same everywhere in the country, But what has happened in California is often propagated to other places around the country. And we have a fairly developed solar market here. But financially, it does not make much sense anymore to export to the grid.
Yeah,
Um,
great point, Nathan. And there's also, and I'll show this a little bit later, a possibility to not only self-consume more later into the afternoon, but also to store it as well. So I'd see a combination of both of those. And I would speculate that energy prices are never going down. In fact, I only see them going up as the time goes along. So what happened? Why did we have this change? Well, there's kind of the utilities argument was that it was kind of poor people and the California duck. And we'll start with the duck. The reason they call it the solar duck curve, you see it on the right, kind of looks like the shape of the duck. But what was happening in California in summer during the day, that there was so much excess production from rooftop solar that was going onto the grid, that at some points that the price of electricity was dropping to the negative. And what does that mean? That means that these power companies, the utilities, Pacific Gas and Electric, San Diego, Southern California Edison, they were running their power plants idle and then having to ramp up the power plants at night to cover the nighttime load. And as you can see here, that all this energy had to come from somewhere. And so there were kind of, the argument was is that they were having to raise the price of people who didn't go solar to cover these excess costs that were being incurred by having people backfeeding the grid. So they were saying that the kind of middle class and upper class people that could afford solar were getting an unfair deal. And that was at the expense of people that couldn't afford to do that, the renters that maybe aren't allowed to put solar on their roof. So what they wanted to do was slash the export rates and really encourage the people to adopt storage and drive the adoption of storage. And so there is kind of an other side of the story. And kind of one of that is that, well, yes,
Hey,
it
Daniel,
is.
before I
Yes.
go on too far, before you go on too far, I did want to break just because Tim had asked on the previous slide, why do you need 2 meters if they're only measuring nets? And just if you don't mind clarifying that that previous slide,
Yeah.
the diagram here was, I'll let you say it. Yes.
Yeah, the diagram here, a lot of people only have 1 meter. I think this was just trying to illustrate the concept of that you're going to have this, it's going to be 1 meter, but it's going to be metered at a different rate, right? You're going to be exporting meter is going to be at your avoided cost rate, or the sell rate, which is the wholesale rate of electricity. And then that second meter that you see there is going to be the price that you pay for retail rate. Does that make sense, Nathan?
It does. Yeah, we wanted to be clear on this. Yeah, there aren't physically 2 different meters. It's just 1 meter. However, the energy flowing in one direction, as Daniel said, you get a very low compensation rate for selling out to the grid. And you have to still pay a much higher retail rate coming back in for the grid. So the outbound and the
Yeah.
inbound don't cancel each other anymore. So
Yeah,
if I'm,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and also I would also kind of caution that there is actually people in other parts of the country that do physically have 2 meters, but here in California we usually just have one, unless that's been different. When we're talking about the other side of the story, back to where we were at, is that there is this excess generation that we're producing in California. We're not an isolated state. In fact, there's opportunities to export some of that energy up to Oregon, and where they have a lot of hydroelectric power. And there is these high voltage DC transmission lines that run up and down the state of California that run into other states. So there's opportunities to export that. Really what this is doing is hindering the solar industry. And at a time when we're starting to electrify our transportation network and our heating network, the last thing we need to do is hinder the generation. We need more, not less. And if you're not able to see a payback on solar, a lot of people aren't going to go solar. And then this is going to really curtail the ability for people to install batteries as well. It really is in opposition of what our decarbonization efforts are here at the state. There is a lot more opportunities for low-income photovoltaic systems on those communities. And virtual net metering, or the ability that you could have an apartment complex with a large solar array and then distribute out those credits to all the tenants, is something it's there, it's been happening, and it's growing every day. So the argument that it really isn't fair to low income people isn't necessarily true. And as Nathan mentioned before, there's a lot of other states that haven't reached the kind of solar saturation point that California has, and they're looking at what we're doing, and they're trying to adopt those less favorable interconnection policies before they can kind of reach that solar saturation point, or prevent the solar industry in those other states from growing. And really, it's not fair where there's other states that kind of are jumping the gun when they should be using favorable interconnection policies to drive the growth of solar. And
Sure. It depends on what you mean by fair, right? I mean, of course, these utility power providers are businesses trying to make money, and they want to sell at higher rates. And the business interests are alive and well in California, and that's why groups stand together to try to lobby for certain policies. And it seems in California, it's really swung in the direction of the utility providers with this last revision of NEM.
And maybe that's the problem, Nathan, is that we have for-profit utility providers. There's other parts of the country where they're co-ops, right? They're member-owned utilities where they're not beholden to shareholders that are looking for profits. So
Sure.
that could be a whole other topic there. But really, we need a balanced approach. We don't need a solar. I do agree that there needs to be a sustainable way forward. We can't have all this solar production producing during the day, and we're out driving our electric cars during the day, and we come home at night and we plug in our electric cars. And then where's that energy coming from? So I do agree that there's some truth to some of this, but we don't need this kind of solar cliff where it's so aggressive. We need perhaps a ramp down of the rates, compensation rates, so that we're not kind of at this solar cliff as well. Breaking down some of the stuff I found on the California Public Utilities Commission, what I really want to call out here is that we're now, the credits for exports is now you're getting compensated at the price of energy where the utilities would otherwise buy elsewhere. Instead of an annual true up, you're still going to have an annual true up, but really you're going to have kind of a monthly bill and I kind of always kind of like this in some ways. Whenever I would have solar customers on NEM 2.0, I'd always have to explain to them, say we installed solar in fall, and they would start to consume electricity and their solar wasn't doing much because it's winter, it's fall. And then they would start to maybe look at if they're really carefully looking at their bill, page 5 or 6 of their utility bill that came every month, they would see that if your true up was at this moment, this is what you would be at for the year. And of course, it was always going negative, negative, negative in winter, and then it would build your credits up in summer and go positive. So that, again, at the anniversary of the installation, that you would kind of break even a little bit. Well,
I think it's worth pointing
yeah.
out, Daniel, as we talk about what happens in California, it's not necessarily the same thing you would get across the country, but certainly the length of the days are shorter in the winter time. And in California, that's historically when we get more rain, and therefore we generate very little or much less electricity. It's about 40% of the number of kilowatt hours on a winter month compared to a midsummer month like June. So June to December, you get this big variation. Same with July and January.
Yeah, it's a much wider kind of delta between the generations. Excellent point, Nathan. Thank you. With the new kind of net billing tariff, you're going to see that you're going to have to kind of pay up each month, which is going to give you a more accurate, kind of less sticker shock if you see a true up bill that isn't correct. Again, one other thing I kind of like a little bit is that they're allowing you to oversize your array. Whenever I do a NEM 2.0 system, I could kind of oversize the system over what their consumption was, and then I'd put a little note in there saying they expect to add load to the system in the future, and they kind of let me get by saying that, well, we can really oversize the systems now in anticipation of heat pumps, in anticipation of some electrification of the energy grid. So as I was doing some of the research behind this, I went back and I read my old home power magazines. I don't know if anybody's ever remembered home power magazines, but and they're still available online in the archives for free to anyone. I was kind of looking at this graph, and again, this kind of illustrates how our consumption and our production kind of curves don't necessarily align. So again, we have the red, which is what we're consuming from the grid. We have the blue, which is what we're kind of self-consumption, and then we have the green, which is what we're exporting. And now with the new net billing tariff, we're not getting paid anything for the green, and we're still getting charged for the red. So what we need to do is store the green in a battery and be able to discharge it in the red. And again, you can kind of see this kind of blue, this red line is kind of illustrative of the consumption curve that you would see in a home. And this green line is illustrative of the production curve that you'd see from your solar array. So again, some old, kind of historic articles, but it's still very top of mind when it comes to what we're thinking about. I would also point out that there's seasonal variations, which is a little bit what Nathan has mentioned, is that, again, we can't store energy during the summer all year and then discharge it in the winter. So again, we're seeing that, and it's really going to think about how these net billing tariffs are going to be affecting us. One thing I want to mention now is that this net metering 3.0 actually could have been a lot worse. There could have been a lot higher fixed rate charges. There could have been other kind of tricky things that the utilities could have done to us. And one great organization, the California Solar Storage Association, has worked hard to lobby lawmakers and make sure that we're getting the best deal that's possible, however bad maybe that still is. And what I did in researching this talk is went on to our members only page. Briggs Stratton Energy Solutions is a member of this organization, and they have these awesome resources available. You can read the interconnection policies if you want, that are right there. That's where I found this heat map here that you're showing us what the export compensation rate is, with granted no adders. There is some adders available on some of this. And again, you can see here that it's less than a cent during certain times of the year. And a lot of people's eyes are going to kind of jump over here to this kind of green block where they're projecting that's what you'll be compensated during those times of the year, when the California Public Utility Commissions expects the most demand for electricity.
So just to clarify as well, I mean, these are prices per kilowatt. So if you sell, like for instance, in April, and you're selling maybe on the 13th hour in April, you're selling back a kilowatt hour of energy, you're getting half a cent per kilowatt hour back. And yet you're consuming that energy and you're paying 50 cents for it, right? Yeah. Yes, there are a couple of hours during September where the compensation rates are high, but in general, you're getting 4 or 5, 6 cents back per kilowatt hour, and you're paying 10 times, 100 times that when you're buying it.
Yeah. And again, the NEM 2.0 was that 1-to-1, so you would still be compensated. So it's a big change. It's really affecting our industry here. And we need to continue to support organizations like California Solar and Storage Association. If you're not a member, I encourage you to join. If you are a member, please RSVP and try to attend in Sacramento later this month. We're going to have a lobby day where we actually do meet with some of the lawmakers and try to tell them our stories, right? If you're sitting there and you're a solar contractor and you're telling them that my employees' jobs are on the line, they listen, and it's a very powerful story for them to hear. So please support this. If you're in another state that you're not part of California, I'm sure that there's other organizations in your state that are like this California Solar and Storage Association, and please support them because they're out there fighting for us.
Hey, Daniel, Kathy
Yes.
asked, with the heat map that we have, the compensation schedule, how often will this compensation schedule change?
Yes, that's a good point. And I had that on another slide. I took it off, but yes, they are going to reevaluate this. I believe it's every 5 years, but that is going to get changed up, and it's not a fixed rate. And that adds some complexity because when you're sitting down at a kitchen table with a homeowner and you're trying to show them the financials, you want to be able to accurately tell them something. And there's companies out there like Aurora Solar, Open Solar. There's a few other ones out there, and these solar proposal companies are trying to model this stuff. And when there's a different price for exported energy for every day of the year and for every hour of the year, and then it changes every few years or however long that time period is, it's really hard to model that and have it be accurate. So I really applaud some of these solar proposal companies like Aurora, like Open Solar, that they're able to model this stuff and think about how we would program the battery to discharge or charge during certain times. The battery scheme, I think, is what Open Solar calls it. It's difficult, and they're making it really complicated to kind of I think in some ways confuse the public and just say, you know what, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to stick on the utility. Nathan, did you
So
have anything to add?
well, yes, as Scott, one of our friends, Scott here, says the heat map is a fantastic sales device for batteries, paying 50 cents per kilowatt hour, but only getting half a cent is a huge driver for people to install batteries so that customers can keep their own electrons. And that's a good point. And I think I'll even kind of further on that, Scott, and say that it's a fantastic sales device for people who already have solar, right? But maybe didn't get it when NEM 3.0 or NEM 2.0 ended. And that actually, unfortunately, is my case. I didn't get my permitting material in just in time. And so it really only makes sense for me to have my 5 kilowatts of solar as long as I have batteries and can self-consume that energy. I just can't consume that energy during the daytime if I have a reasonable sized solar system. And I want that energy in the evening when everybody else wants it. And batteries are the way to do it. So
Yeah.
thanks, Scott, for the comment there.
Yeah, thank you. And I will say this, that, you know, one of the reasons I'm even sitting here today and with Nathan as my kind of coworker and colleague in this is really I got into the renewable energy industry because of the environment and because I knew that we needed to be better stewards of the earth. And at the end of the day, there's I feel like a lot of like-minded people out there that are go solar, go photovoltaics, adopt energy conservation methods in their house because they want to be a better steward. But really, things have to kind of pencil out financially. And so you're absolutely right, Nathan, that we really need to store these energies. I mean, as much as I like the earth, you know, it's hard to take a loss on a system to pay it off. This is right off of Aurora's kind of blog, and I found this kind of interesting. And just mind you, there's no storage associated in this slide here. So let's take a look at what's happening. This black curve right here is our production. This blue dashed line is our consumption. And what they're showing here is this dark blue is our self-consumption. This light blue is our export. And this kind of salmon color right here is our self-consumption during peak rates. Whenever you go solar in California, you're automatically put onto time of use rates, where during certain times of the day, usually 5 to 9, 4 to 10, energy is going to be more expensive. And what kind of Aurora was showing here is that by you get more value by self-consuming on solar, even though the area of this salmon color is a lot less than the area of this light blue color. Monetarily, the value of self-consuming later into the evening is worth more, especially if we're able to self-consume during peak hours. So what does this mean? It means west-facing arrays. So what we're going to do is, and I understand a lot of people may not have a west-facing array or ability to do a west-facing array with the pitches of the roof or maybe trees or whatever the case, but the more we can orient the solar photovoltaic arrays kind of to the southwest a little bit, actually southwest is more probably ideal, we can self-consume later into the afternoon. So the idea here is that we're shifting the production curve later into the evening so that we're self-consuming more and we're not having to buy that expensive energy. What we're doing is we're allowing the batteries are full of energy. Batteries are stored up and they're just waiting to start discharging themselves in the evening. And if we can delay the time in which the batteries need to start discharging, we can kind of maximize our savings.
For clarity for me, Daniel, this slide could be. It seemed to me that it's solar and excess solar powering home loads. If you don't mind going back to the previous slide, we've got self-consumed and exported. I don't see any for storage here, but that light blue, what you're saying is could be used to store as well, right? So you could use that to fill up your batteries and then you could export a little bit of it. But if we had a west-facing array, you wouldn't have to start discharging your batteries until later in the evening. Is that what you're saying?
Or perhaps you don't have batteries at all, and you are trying to look back at your financial return. And we do sell our inverter, which can be installed without batteries. And you can always add batteries in the later and kind of add that resilience to them. But Aurora's kind of argument here is that even without batteries, you're going to get the best financial return, if it is possible, by having a south or a southwest or west facing array. One way, so that's shifting the production curve later into the afternoon. And again, you are correct there, Nathan, is that yes, you can essentially delay the time in which you have to start discharging your batteries because you're producing later into the afternoon when it's that expensive time of use rates. Another way to do that would be to adjust instead of shifting the consumption curve, you can adjust the production curve, you adjust the consumption curve. And ways to do that are with Lumen, Span. These companies make load shedding devices that are very intelligent and can then adjust the load profile to maximize your returns on a system. One thing is that I was doing my research for this talk was doing the California Solar and Storage Association had some great kind of FAQs on this. And one of them was, so say I sell my home and the new buyers and my home has solar on it. If I sell my home, do the new homeowners have to go onto the new NEM 3.0? And the answer is no. They will essentially take over your net energy metering interconnection policy, and however many years you have remaining on that NEM interconnection policy, they get to retain. Mentioned this earlier, can I add a battery without losing my NEM status? So say somebody has solar, NEM 2.0, they want to add a battery to give them resiliency. They can, and they're already getting that one-to-one credit, so they're already kind of that favorable one. So really adding a battery isn't really necessarily going to help them with that retail sell rate because they're already on it. It will help them kind of with that time of use. But yes, they can add a battery to the system without losing that favorable net energy metering policy. Another one I kind of really like to look at here was, say you got solar. Say you have an 8,000 watt inverter and you got an 8,000 watt array up on the roof. Can I go up there and add more solar? And the answer is yes, you can without losing your favorable net energy metering 2.0 rate. And why would you ever do that, right? The 8,000 watt inverter can only handle 8,000 watts of solar, but if you can add more photovoltaics, you can produce more in the morning and in the evening when the sun isn't necessarily at 100% up above the sky. So it allows you to add generation capacity without losing your net energy metering. Now, back up a little bit, it does say that if you have, say, an 8,000 watt inverter and you have, say, 6,000 watts of solar, you can't add, I think you're allowed to add about 1,000 watts, but you can't really add more solar onto that because you're really increasing the size of the array. So as we're trying to think about how we're positioning to sell the system, and I agree with that comment, Nathan, that having that print out that heat map and join California Solar and Storage Association, and there's lots of resources that you can print out for them and share them with the homeowners. How are we going to position this with the homeowner? You're never going to sit down with the homeowner and tell them, well, you missed the boat. Net energy metering is gone, and this is what it is now. Really, we're going to focus the conversation, and what we can do that by is asking questions in preparation for our sales pitch, and listen. Don't talk. Listen to what they say, write them down, and then come back later and then kind of hit on the points that they find most valuable. So Josh Brum at Solagent, I got to give him a little credit for this. He kind of had come up with these buckets. And what these buckets are is bucket number one is somebody who basically just wants to see a return on investment on their solar. They don't have many outages. They're not really concerned about outages, even if the power does go out. And so how do we approach this person? And this was kind of a unique kind of idea to me, is that you sell them batteries without backup. So what you do is you sell them maybe a photovoltaic system, a solar, and some of our batteries that pair well with that solar, and you don't do a critical load subpanel. The solar, you can put CTs, you can tell the solar, look, I want you to discharge the battery to home loads during the time of use rates during the evening, and then if the power were to say ever go out, there's no backup in the home. And why would you do that? One is that you can save money. You don't have to buy that critical load subpanel. You don't have to pull loads from the main panel over to the critical load subpanel. It's a little less conduit, right? I see some people doing this, but if you're already out there doing the work, you already have the solar there, you already kind of have everything there, it's not that much extra money and labor to add a backup subpanel. And that's where bucket number two would come into play, where you're going to kind of just give them the backup resiliency, but we're not backing up the whole home. And how would we kind of size that? We would account for all the daytime loads, subtract from what we expect to be kind of self-consumption, and then make sure we have enough storage that where we can store that up during the day and then discharge it at night. The third bucket, that's somebody who's like, I hate the utility person, where they don't want to buy power from the grid, they don't want to export power from the grid, and they want to kind of have the whole home backup functionality. And in that case, I think the perfect pairing for that is going to be a Solar 15K with our inverter, a larger battery bank. And really, you have to kind of oversize that battery bank, especially if we're going to try to get them through the dead of winter. And a lot of times people may just say, okay, well, that's fine in the winter. I may need to buy a little bit from the grid. So it's really important to figure out what's important to them. Is it just cost savings? Is it cost savings and backup? Or is it like, I want to be an off-grid, on-grid kind of person as well?
Hey, Daniel, Scott's asked the question. So Lauren has made a comment about nuclear reactors producing much of the energy in Ontario and needing costly repairs, and then, of course, needing to be dismantled, and those that nuclear waste needing storage. Scott's also asked a question that I wasn't sure how to answer. He says, does Briggs and Stratton have software that we can upload green button data to help size the batteries? I wasn't sure what green button data was. Can you answer Scott's question?
Yeah, of course. So green button data is, I think that might be a specific to Pacific Gas and Electric. Essentially what that does is it allows you to go into a homeowner's utility information and then pull in the usually 15-minute interval data that talks about what they're consuming. So that helps you create a proposal that's accurate, that's going to accurately, model what their consumption and production will be. And not with our software, but that would be with Aurora and Open Solar. Now, maybe and clarify this is that there's also, I would say, software is becoming more and more important in our industry every year, and the idea that software may be able to in real time determine when the most favorable times to charge or discharge the batteries based on 15-minute interval data perhaps could also be something that could come along. So I hope I answered that question. Essentially, green button data allows you to grab consumption data from a homeowner's utility company to help model the payback periods.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yes. One way to position the solar is selling packages. And Nathan, I got your system coming up here in a second that you can talk a little bit about, but just keep in mind that most outages, minus like PSPSs minus big earthquakes minus big storms, most outages aren't as long as people kind of expect. In fact, most outages are just a couple hours. It's somebody that got into a car accident and took out the power line going to your neighborhood, and they got the power back on in a couple hours. So selling hours of storage can be a little less confusing to homeowners than starting to talk about kilowatt hours and kilowatts and the like. So we found that the average home in the country uses about 1,200 watts continuously, and we expect that during an outage, you're probably not going to use all 1,200 watts continuously for an hour, maybe about half of that. And what we can do then is kind of do a little math and sell these packages here. So you're seeing here is our amplified batteries. These are indoor rated batteries paired with our inverter. And this is how many hours of backup you might expect. We can also do that with our Simplify outdoor rated batteries as well. We can sell packages. So here's Nathan's house. Nathan, what are we looking at here? We're looking at how many kilowatt hours Nathan uses per month in a year. And
Yeah,
you
we're
don't
looking
use
at
a
the
lot.
different months of the year, and as you can see, I mean, what we're looking at, and so this is a year ago's data. It's gone up significantly with the addition of a hot tub, um, which right now means that load to keep that hot tub warm in winter, because it's colder and because there's less sunlight, is not quite enough. So my 5 kilowatt system can't quite keep up with my batteries, and so I am drawing a bit more from the grid this year. But our temperatures don't really dip. That's the average temperature that's shown there. They don't get too hot in the summer. I'm really close to the coast, just a couple of miles from the ocean. And so these numbers are low compared to the averages Daniel just gave. So Daniel was talking about the average home uses more than this. So if you're using 1,000 watts on average for a full day, that would be 24 to, a little more than 24 kilowatt hours, maybe approaching 30.
Yeah, and you're about half.
Yes, I'm about half of what that kind of average home would use, as you can see in this graph. So now we're looking at daily kilowatt hour consumption throughout a month. I believe this was the month of January here.
Yep.
Um,
And then what we did is we broke
Yep.
it down into hours, right, Nathan?
Exactly. And then we look at when I'm using more energy, and that's typically in the earlier part of the day. I'm working from home or cooking breakfast for the family in the morning.
And that is typical.
Yeah, and then there's a lull in the afternoon, and that's a time when I'm really not consuming that much energy, but my solar system is typically producing quite well in the afternoon, and that's where I want to be able to store that energy that I'm not using, so that I don't have to pay 42 cents a kilowatt hour for the energy that I'm going to use in the next few hours in the evening while we're cooking again and taking showers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and going back to that Aurora slide, just to kind of hammer it home here, is that their kind of idea is that you would kind of either shift that solar production so it more aligns with your expected consumption at the home.
By using a west-facing array,
by
right?
using a southwest facing array. And then additionally with lumen and span, we would then adjust maybe you turn your electric hot water heater off, and then make the hot water, say, during other times of the day. And a big tank is going to have a lot of thermal kind of capacity and keep that heat going. So that's
Fred
kind of the idea.
writes here that 1,200 watts continuous seems very low. Refrigerators alone use about 800 watts. I think that's inaccurate, Fred, in terms of refrigerators.
Well,
typically, there's what's called a duty cycle on refrigerators. Yeah. And so when the refrigerator compressor is running, it will consume more. I have a new linear compressor LG refrigerator. Even when that linear compressor is running on the duty cycle, I'm still using less than 300 watts with that newer refrigerator.
Yeah, and it's a big 24 cubic foot as well, probably. So
yes, it is. It is a full size. But I do want to point out that 1,200 watts is an annual average over 24-hour period as well. So that's averaging nighttime use and daytime use. So during the daytime, especially with air conditioning, right, you can hit higher averages. And I don't think we have the slide in this deck, but there are states in the South which use over 2 kilowatt hours on average throughout the year.
yeah.
There are seasonal variations.
Absolutely.
Summertime, you might use 5 kilowatts during the day and maybe 2 to 3 at night. And then wintertime less. So keep in mind we're trying to make this as easy for the homeowner to understand as possible. And that's why Daniel was kind of sharing this average amount of backup time. Of
Yeah,
course, as electricians and those informed about solar understand, the amount of backup time certainly just depends on how quickly you're using the energy. You got
yeah,
a tank of energy. If you drain it really quickly by putting a lot of loads at once, you won't get that backup time. But
yeah.
this should give the homeowner a rough idea, right, Daniel?
Yeah, exactly. And recognize that they're going to have an app. They're going to know there's an outage if they look at the
Yes.
app. And with an 8 millisecond transfer time, they might not know. But absolutely. And I would encourage anybody who's selling storage or who was on this call is what are your consumption and understand yours and see where that kind of fits in. Obviously, the people who use air conditioning are going to use a lot more. So this is the system that Nathan got, right? And I recognize we have about 10 minutes left in the hour, so I'm going to kind of speed it up a little bit for everybody. Stop us with any questions, but Nathan was able to put in this system because Nathan's consumption was pretty low in kilowatt hours and energy, and also his power rarely ever exceeded 3 kilowatts. We're able to sell him a single inverter system, give him that outage, and really this, it says 18 hours here, but he'll probably be able to, this is 11 kilowatt hours of storage, and we just told you that he uses 10 kilowatt hours a day. So he's probably going to get almost 24 hours of backup on this system. That's his
Yeah,
system there.
I can get a larger amount of backup time for sure than what is advertised. Scott
And
makes a good point that it might be a good idea for me to have an east and a southeast and a southwest facing array. The only problem is my roof. I don't think we have a slide showing it, but I only have like a big south facing roof. So I'd either have to tilt up and no longer match the shape of my roof, or do what I'd like to do and put in a ground mount array,
yeah,
so that I could get that west facing array on like a pole mount. Ground
yeah.
mount. Yeah.
And I would also mention here that he gets 18 to 24 hours without solar. With his solar, he'll be able to recharge it every day and essentially be able to microgrid his home. So
Yeah,
that was without solar.
I can go off grid in the summer. I can't do it in the winter.
Yeah.
Just don't get enough solar, and too short of days in the winter time and too much rain.
We're seeing, especially this year, we're seeing
Yeah.
Nathan's system here. It's a Briggs Stratton 6K inverter with 3 batteries down there at the bottom. What we're seeing on the right is our energy track apps. There's different ways to program these systems. And again, programming and software is going to become more and more important as there's different variables on when we need to export, when we need to charge, when we need to start generators, how we model these systems with the homeowners. But as you're adding, a system and Nathan, you got a gas furnace, a gas range, gas water heater, no cooling system. As you can kind of increase the payback on these systems by adding additional electrification systems, especially if you can stop where I live, it's $4 a gallon of gas. And if you can start to charge up your car and be able to charge the car with cheap electricity, it's absolutely able to see a better financial payback on these systems. And that's going to be a whole other conversation, is how does charging a car fit into this? Do we do vehicle to grid? Do we discharge home batteries to car batteries? It's not quite that simple, and a lot of interesting things coming on the horizon. So Nathan, that might be another topic for us to discuss how we see that working. You program a system. In this example right here, we're going to program a system to essentially not backfeed, charge up the power, use the system, and then be able to back up if we ever need backup, and then discharge during certain times of use hours that we program in. Zero tide export, right? Why send power back out to the grid if you're getting nothing for it? Just try to essentially off-grid your home as much as possible. And only when during the winter, during a storm, do you need to buy a little power from grid, you can. This is a great kind of setup. This is what we're looking at here is a SolarArc 15K. And Nathan, you're going to be doing a great talk on this coming up, not only online, available to everybody here, but also out at NABCEP. The SolarArc 15K has a 200 amp pass-through, so we're not really doing backed up loads. We're essentially just keeping all the loads over here in the main distribution panel. We're feeding 200 amps right into the SolarArc, 200 amps right out. If for whatever reason the grid goes down, the SolarArc will disconnect itself from grid, run on batteries, solar, and potentially even a generator to off-grid the home. and you could program the solar to essentially do everything in its power, maybe that's a pun, to not backfeed the grid and not consume from the grid. And only when, again, in the extreme kind of winters and the nights, do you want to be able to buy from grid as possible.
Yeah, there's a small correction to that one,
Yeah.
Daniel. I think we're showing the generators having a 100 amp pass through there, but I think it's 19.2 kilowatts on the AC side. So I believe that's closer to 80 amps. But still, 80 amps of pass through at 240 volts, right? You can certainly power most homes with that amount of power.
Yeah, and I that's exactly right. Is that I think I called it out there because the generator has a 100 amp breaker, but it's not. I think it's not capable, so you'd want to downsize that appropriately. Thank you for that correction. Um, we have, like I already mentioned, outdoor rated 4.98 battery, our inverter right there, 6 kilowatt inverter, and then the energy track control app. We use lithium iron phosphate batteries. That's the safest of the chemistries with the longest cycle life. And it's definitely something that a lot of the other competition in the industry is moving towards. Again, there's the lineup of the batteries. We do have a non-communicating battery on the far left, the Phi battery that I'm going to call out. That only has a 10-year warranty, but that's a great battery for lead acid battery replacements. That has a non-communicating battery management system, which doesn't sound like it's cool, but it is cool because if you have a system like an old Schneider, old Magnusign, some old pieces of equipment, Outback equipment, that doesn't have the ability to have to talk to communicating batteries, why buy a communicating battery? That battery on the left still has the same safe lithium ferrophosphate, the same kind of construction that we've done here in Southern California. So it's a great battery for lead acid battery replacements or some more of the simple systems that you're not using a communicating battery for. Those Phi and Amplify batteries are indoor rated batteries. If you are going to put them outside, we sell some battery cabinets, the Boss 6 and the Boss 12. We can additionally take the Boss 12 cabinet, take out 6 batteries, and go ahead and put in our inverter, or we could also put in a solar converter in here as well. Here's the exciting new battery, the 6.6. And I mentioned that each one of those modules is 6.6 kilowatt hours. So you're looking at almost a 20 kilowatt hour stack. That's by design, right? Because 20 kilowatt hours in some jurisdictions is the max you can install in one location. So we're kind of trying to hit that upper limit right there. It is still kind of in pre-launch. So if you want to get on the mailing list and learn more about that, get your phone out, scan that QR code right there, and that's going to allow you to sign up, potentially even get sent some free shirts, pens, and stuff like that. So stay tuned as well.
Yeah, more information about this battery is going to be coming out, and it will have both a wall mount and a floor mount option for this battery. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a great pairing for that SolarArc 15K as well. One or two of these stacks can give you significant amount of backup time, and even a single stack like Daniel's showing there can run that SolarArc 15K.
Yeah, and we keep saying this, talking about the SolarArc 15K. I just want to mention that, you know, our inverter, our 6K inverter is right there. That 6K inverter really is kind of in a different, it's a different class than the 15K, right? So every homeowner wants whole home backup until they hear about how much it costs. So I would come into these systems and these proposals with kind of, you know, lead with the SolarArc 15K, lead with a whole home backup situation, lead with that ability to kind of really give them everything they want. But then keep in mind that our inverter, the 6K Simplify inverter, is well price positioned to offer them a much more affordable kind of, let's get you backup, let's get you the ability to store power and make money under this new NEM metering paradigm. But again, the 15K is more of a whole home backup, whereas the 6K we're going to position still as a partial home backup at a less cost, but still either one of these systems is going to be able to pair very well with our batteries, communicate with our batteries, and also be able to offer them a financial return under NEM 3.0.
Yeah, and for those customers, Daniel, that want to come in under, at a lower budget point and that don't want to back up that whole home, you've still got 40 amps of pass through on a Briggs Stratton 6 kilowatt inverter, right? And, keeping in mind, like for my system, I rarely use more than 6 kilowatts of power, right?
Yeah, we
That's
showed
a lot of
averages
loads on
too.
me. Exactly.
So in a way, a lot of ways, this is overkill. But there's, don't people have money. If they want to spend money, be ready to take the money and be ready to lead with a larger solution. And that's where this Solar 15K.
It's
Uh,
overkill, but it also gives room for growth, right? And that's
yeah,
what I like about the 15K. And certainly you can grow our inverter as well.
yeah,
You
that's
can
right.
start with one inverter. You can then add another one in parallel. Daniel and I built a parallel inverter stack last month, and I'm putting together a video showing how to do that if you're interested. Um, and so anyway, there are a lot of options here, and that's what we're trying to show.
Yeah, and what I'm showing here on this is that anytime you have an inverter and a battery bank, you want to make sure that you have enough battery kind of kilowatt hours or fuel in the tank to be able to support the home loads during time of use or during backups or whatever positioning. But you also need a battery bank large enough to be able to provide enough power, right? Enough watts or enough ability to discharge the battery quick enough to support an inverter that's being called upon to back up a lot of the home. So Nathan, as we're looking here, what I'm showing you is what the minimum number of batteries are required to be paired with the solar so that you can handle that 275 amps that the solar may be drawing off of the batteries. And I know we just reached 11 o'clock. Just a few more slides. Thank you for sticking with everyone. But Nathan, if you just want to talk a little about how is that 6.6 positioned to be a perfect match for power output for that Solar 15K?
Well, the unique factor about the 6.6 that's shown there that it's coming soon. So first off, I mean, the number of batteries required to run this Solar 15K, that's if you need to take advantage of the full capacity of that inverter, right? Being able to provide 12 kilowatts straight from the batteries in a grid down situation. And that stack of 3 batteries on the right side of your screen can do that. These batteries can discharge at 1C when required, right? And so what you're looking at there is a stack of 3. Each one of those is 6.6 kilowatt hours, and there's a power distribution unit at the top, communications hub.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Nathan, is that this isn't necessarily the minimum number. You could theoretically get into the programming settings of the Solarc and adjust the max charge and discharge rate to not exceed the C rate of the batteries as well. We make generators. We've been making generators for a long time. We have a great lineup of generators that can be automatically controlled by the Solarc, by our Simplify inverter, and frankly, by a lot of other inverters that have automatic generator start capability. These generators can be controlled by that. We have a very aggressive warranty on the generators as well. And we have what's known as NG Max, where our generators, some of our models of generators don't derate when you run them on natural gas. And so that's a great advantage. Reach out to us. We're able to help you with that. We do have an IQ installer program where you can get cash back for all batteries that you installed. Scan that QR code right there, and we can put you on the maps, get you rebates, and help promote you on our social media channels.
So Daniel, I know
yes.
we're over time, but one more rebate I'd like to offer everybody that we don't have on the screen here is that we have this $1,000 off. I guess it is on the screen now. $1,000 off if you're installing your first system. That's either with our batteries or with a Solarc inverter, our inverter. So your first ESS system from Simplify, we have a $1,000 rebate for first-time installers.
Yeah, and additionally,
In addition to that $100 back off, per battery, right? So both of those, and
SGIP. Yeah, so
yes,
part of kind of the NEM 3.0 was it refunding the self-generation incentive program and putting a bunch more money back into that pool. So if you have somebody that's on a well pump, you have somebody that's on a medical device, look into this self-generation incentive program. And additionally, because we manufacture these batteries and assemble these batteries in Southern California, we're qualified for some of those additional adders. So take a look at that. On the screen, that QR code is for the gateway. Nathan and I want to be better at these talks every time we give them. So how do we become better? We get your feedback. Right here is a QR code, a lot of QR codes, but thank you for sticking with us to this few minutes over. Scan this, fill out this survey. That allows us to be better at our presentations and really deliver better talks for everybody's sake. So please get your survey in and let us know. We're also have the Power Academy, which is available to everybody. There's a lot more online, kind of on-demand talks, so you don't have to be here during these live talks. Go ahead and scan that QR code to sign up for the Power Academy as well.
And this is free online learning.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So there's the link to the survey again. Our email is energystorage@basco.briggs.stratton.com. Give us a call and let us know. Nathan, any kind of closing thoughts from you or any other questions that we didn't get a time to address?
I think you did a great job with the NEM 3.0, Daniel. And we're cognizant of the fact that this does not apply everywhere in the country, and our electricity rates are higher than many places, lower than some. Um, but I think a lot of good points were made about the fact that California, what happens in California often does propagate across the country. And it's certainly created a real headwind for solar installers in California this year. We've heard about a lot of lost jobs, and it's created challenges. And so if you're a solar installer that has not installed batteries before, now is a good opportunity to keep that business rolling, by providing solutions that make sense. And I think this talk was designed by you, Daniel, to help people understand what makes sense under the rules, under the agreement that we have with the utilities. So thank you for your time. And for those that have attended, if you have any questions, you want to get a hold of us, want to talk to an application engineer, phone numbers on the screen, we're just a call away.
Yeah. And thank you, Nathan, for being here. And thank you all for who have attended. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.